perpetually become a white belt and you're learning continuously, you become the master.
Right.
You become the black belt because you're perpetually learning. You never stop learning. You're always a white belt, but that makes you a black belt because you're always learning. You're always growing.
Welcome, friends, to the Budo Brothers podcast. My name is David, and joining me, as always, are Eric and Kyle, founders of Budo Brothers. Gentlemen, you ready to go?
Absolutely.
Let's get it.
All right, we're going to talk about the white belt mentality right now.
White belt mentality.
So dig into what your mind was like when you had a white belt around your waist. You're just starting off. You're a total noob. Everything in front of you is amazing, and this entire world has opened up. Do you remember adjusting to that mindset? And was it an adjustment? Did it take time, or was it something that only happened after a while where you looked back and you were like, man, this was a really cool time? Tell me about it. Tell me about that idea and that mindset.
I just got thrown right back to the very beginning, right? Where you're excited you've learned about a new school in your community. Either your friend told you about it, or back in the day, literally what I would do when they had the yellow pages, it was a book. Okay, a phone book I would go to M and I would look up martial arts and I would go through all the different studios, Wing Chun and all these, this one does weapons and this one does, I would look through all of them and then I would get my mom to call them. I'd be like, yo, Mom, call this one. What do you want me to ask? Ask if they spin nunchucks. Just like things like that, right? So when I found this spot, it was Taekwondo. I wanted to learn how to kick. I wanted to be very spin kicky, and I was just obsessed with that when I was about 5 years old. I would watch Ninja Turtles and be like, I want to do that. And so we found a Taekwondo place nearby our house, and I remember not knowing what I was getting into, because like anything that you do that is brand new, you don't have a roadmap. You've never been down there. So naturally you're excited. You're kind of nervous. Your heart's pumping. This is new. It's what's going to be like. And you're uncertain. You're also not confident, right? You don't know. You're like, you have no idea what you're getting into. So personally, I tend to play it safe. I have no idea what's going on. I'll just play it safe. And so I remember my heart pumping when I was driving up to this school. I was like, what if they don't accept me? Like, what if they don't think I'm honorable? Like all these things you don't know. And going in there and watching these other kids kicking pads and doing these spin kicks, and I was like, I wanted to get on the mats more than ever. And I wanted to get on the mats with that excitement that you had as a kid when you would do something that would almost make you shake, like you're going to the water park, right? Or there's like something where you're going to lose your mind. You're going to Disneyland. You're going to, like, that excitement. Man, I had that when I stepped on the mats. And that's when I knew that I love martial arts. Martial arts gives me that excitement. And that was when I was 5 years old.
That's really cool. Recently, I had the privilege of training this little guy. His name's Grayson. And Grayson comes up to me while we're training. And he waits till all the kids in the class aren't looking. He's like, hey. I'm like, hey, bud, what's going on? I got to show you some ninja tricks. I'm like, show me some what? He's like, I have to show you some ninja tricks. Take it, he's 6 years old. I'm like, okay, bud, let's see your ninja tricks. So he waits till nobody in his class is looking and then just starts flailing around and spinning his arms and kicking, and then like looks at me so proud after. He's like, I've been working really hard, and then walks away. And I was like, oh my God, this kid is amazing. But that reminded me of what it was like to do martial arts, because I felt like I was invincible. Like, I'm the same as the Ninja Turtles. I'm the same as Bruce Lee. Now I am this martial artist and I could protect anybody. And those
Right.
those bad guys in my room and under my bed are in trouble. And it was so powerful that I immersed myself in it, but it gave me this sense of confidence and like fearlessness because I was learning something powerful.
Right.
And that was one of my first memories of being like a white belt, stepping into that and being like, I'm doing what my heroes are doing.
So, David, do you remember your first white belt?
I do, and you know, here's how I date myself. Right, I started because of Ralph Macchio in the freaking Karate Kid.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I couldn't handle it, man. That whole crane thing with the kick and the wax on, wax off, and squish just like the grape, like Mr. Miyagi. The whole thing was, you know, and I was like 9-10 years old, right around then, right. And so when I first started, I was 11, and it was like that. There was such a mystique going into that building, and you know, for the first time, and then seeing these people, and those who had the higher ranks, they were like, I'm like just on a pedestal for an 11-year-old kid, you know. And I remember just wanting to be like that, and you know, for me, it was Taekwondo. That was where it started, and you know, mirrors everywhere, and you know, just people checking out their own stuff and their kicks and the breaking and like just all of these different things that were going on in that environment. That was just, it was this entire world that before I stepped in the door, I didn't know existed. You know, I had no idea of what to expect. All I saw was, you know, Ralph Macchio and like, you know, doing a thing with Johnny in the tournament. And I'm like, man, I'm going to walk in here and people are going to be punching me straight in the face. Which obviously did not happen. And so it was this really weird kind of, thing. And then after that, you know, I remember I have these little memories of these little corrections and things that I learned, you know, as a kid that I've always carried on, you know, and, you know, now I'm right around the ripe age of 45. And, so here I am 34 years later. And I remember somebody correcting me saying, don't say yeah, say yes.
Right.
You know, little things like that. Man. And through my whole life, I remember don't say yeah, say yes. You know, and it's one of those things that as a white belt, I learned and I held on to. And eventually when I had my own dojo and I've got students and everything else, I hear myself and I see myself as that 11-year-old kid that I'm staring at in the modern day. And I'm telling him, don't say yeah, say yes. You know, and so it was really neat having that mentality, and it was cool to try and get back to that in other aspects of my life as well.
Cool.
Man, I love that. I love how martial arts can preserve those things that nowadays, I mean, you can't, everything's so sensitive, right? Like you get, like everybody gets an 8th place trophy and all these things, and mom and dad aren't disciplining their kids. And then, but for whatever reason, in the martial arts world, you can lay down some discipline.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, hey, no, you don't do that.
Right. That's not the correct way.
Sorry.
Yeah.
This is not acceptable.
Yeah. Totally.
And it'd be like, whoa. And the kids that have never even had that in their life, where there's a boundary where, no, that's where it stops, right?
Right.
There's discipline. There's in this space, you're expected to be respectful.
Respect is massive in a dojo.
This brings up a question for me, right? That I'm curious to throw by you guys is that, do you think it is easier to accept, understand, and abide by rules when you are just starting out, as opposed to when you have experience in something? So you can take this any direction. You could take this martial arts, you could take this business, you could take wherever you want to go. But do you think it is easier when you're just starting out for somebody to say, this is the rule and this is what you should do? Or when you have a lot of experience to be able to look at that and say, okay, I see the reason for that rule. Yes, you're right. This is what I should do. Which one is easier?
I think that if you have some type of experience, it's a lot easier. Because let's take Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
When you first start off as a white belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, some of the advice you get is don't put all your energy in and tap early. But then you go practice, you start sparring, and you're into it a little bit, and you're like, I'm not gonna tap, I'm the man. Like, just like you're fighting everything, and eventually, no matter what, somebody's gonna put you into a vulnerable position and make you tap out. And if you fought too hard, you hurt yourself. But having that experience and that knowledge, you realize it's not about using the force or fighting through this, and to know when to submit or tap out, and to know when you're in a powerful position or a vulnerable position. You have more understanding of what's happening. It's like a language too. Like, you can't really participate in a language until you have some understanding of how to put things together.
Man, practice it.
So I know that there's a saying, Eric, and I think you explained it the best, about a white belt's mentality.
Yeah.
Can you touch on that a little bit more?
That white belt mentality, we literally had this idea. We love the idea of perpetual learning, right? And you cannot learn that what you think you already know. And the worst thing is a black belt mentality, where I know all this and I do this, and then you can do this, and then you can do that, and then okay, cool, yeah. No one's growing here. No, and there's people that know it all that refuse to even open up to the opportunity to learn from either a differing perspective or another person's point of view. Like, there's so many opportunities to learn, even when you're proficient, when you think you know something, to switch it to the what else don't I know? What can I learn? Instead of what do I know? And how great am I? Right?
Absolutely. And if you take nature as an example, if you look at a plant, if you stop growing or flowering, you begin to die. The whole process of learning and continually educating yourself and taking the time to look, experience, and expand is very powerful part of living a happy, fulfilled life.
And it keeps it fresh.
Yes.
When you wake up every single day and you have a white belt on, meaning you've just stepped onto the mats and said, what can I learn? Oh, what is this? What's your style? What, can I? And even like that makes life continually fresh. When you think about what can I learn, even from the instances where you're like, oh my God, I hate this, I don't want to be here, blah, blah, blah. Like, what can I learn? Can you learn about what not to be like? You know, if you're in an uncomfortable situation and someone's treating you poorly, that's an opportunity to learn how not to treat other people because you're feeling a certain way. Beautiful. You learned something. You grew from a negative experience. That's a hack.
And also being excited to learn. Finding something that you wake up and you're like, I can't wait to do that. Martial arts is that thing. And when we were kids, that's what I can't wait to go to martial arts.
Yeah.
I can't wait. And like, tournaments for me were amazing. I loved going to martial arts tournaments because I liked fighting. I liked controlled fighting. My mom would kick my butt if I was not fighting outside of martial arts. But enjoying that and taking that and applying it to life. Like, I was reading this article on Pokemon, and this guy absolutely loved Pokemon, would research them, learn about Charizard, Pikachu, Bulbasaur, all these random things. And he became the most expert information source on Pokemon. And that thing died out, but he kept in it and kept learning about it. And all of a sudden, Pokemon came back on the scene, like that Pokemon Go game release,
the VR stuff,
and it like got into Hollywood, and it revived. And he started a podcast around it. And he had this podcast going well before this was happening. And he's explaining all the details, like if you do this and that, like, and now he is making a boatload of cash
for sure
talking about Pokemon, just because he kept educating himself about this industry, this thing. He became the expert in it. How could you predict that in a million years?
Isn't that really ironic? When you perpetually become a white belt and you're learning continuously, you become the master.
Right.
You become the black belt. Because you're perpetually you never stop learning. You're always a white belt. But that makes you a black belt. Because you're always learning, you're always growing, you have assets because you are this sponge that soaks up every experience and extracts the wisdom from every different possible avenue.
And the minute that your mindset allows you to live into the black belt mentality, and the black belt, like, I've made it, I've arrived, this is as good as I'm going to be. I am the king of the universe.
You know what you should do?
Yep.
Thanks. Yeah, please tell us what you.
Oh gosh, if you have that mindset where you've reached the pinnacle, that is when the world starts to pass you by. You begin to slow. You begin to decay. That's what happens at companies.
Yeah, truth.
Companies get fat and happy and stagnant
because they did it.
And they just sit there and they rely on their old ways, and then new, nimble, creative, scrappy companies come.
Yep. And nibble. All of a sudden, you got termites in the foundation, and that shit comes falling down.
Absolutely.
That's creative destruction.
Heck, it even breaks into relationships. If you got a girlfriend, and all of a sudden you start acting status quo girlfriend or wife, and you just act always the same as you're acting every day the same, all of a sudden somebody's gonna come and eat your dinner, right? Like, because in your eye, in somebody else's eyes, they're gonna look and see like this brand new beautiful girl, and they're gonna start wooing and treating her right. And it's like, what? Like, you have to perpetually keep growing and continually
creating.
And that's with relationships. Like, every good relationship, if you stagnate and you don't learn and inquire about what that person's needs, desires, wants, and how to communicate with them, that relationship will go south too.
So this hits on something huge, right? Which is, that learning mindset as opposed to a closed mind mindset. And in fact, taking something, and you can use the word relationship, but I'll stretch this out to business relationship, to, a regular relationship, a relationship with, a teacher or a student or whatever else, like any kind of an interconnected working relationship with another person. If you take that person for granted, you are closing your mind. If you're not like, I can learn something from them, I can learn something about myself, and so on and so forth. As soon as you shut that door, you've stopped. True. There goes your growth. And to use like the plant analogy, like you used before, that's always absorbing that new information that's your sun and that's your water right there. And that's how you're going to grow. And, think about just as humans, how much we desire knowledge on a daily basis. And you may even deny it, but you do. We have word of the day calendars. We have this day in history. Everything about learning about a specific thing. And now, just with the internet as it is, you can just be online in 2 seconds, learning absolutely anything about absolutely anything at your fingertips. But still, you'll have people that will tell you that they know everything, and that nobody else knows what they know. Nothing else makes sense. Their way is the only way. And so I think when you do reach that point, there is something to that. There's a diversion of a path when you have that white belt mentality and you start out where everything is knowledge and you're soaking it in and you're that sponge. And there comes a point where you either decide, I can still learn, but I can show others what I've been through, or I've made it to this point, I know everything, and that's what I'm going to teach people. And that's a real fork in the road, because one of those ways you will continue to grow while bringing others along with you. One of those ways you're not growing anymore. And that stunts the growth of everybody else behind you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's really good.
And, listening when you were talking about being that sponge and absorbing and getting to that fork in the road, when you were saying being that sponge, I literally envisioned in order for the sponge to absorb anything, it has to be dry. It has to be empty. The value of the cup is in its emptiness.
Right.
Because you can use it to fill things up. You can fill knowledge up. But you have to be empty. And when we're full and we have a black belt mentality where we know everything, we're full. There's no more. You can't put anything more in the cup.
And it takes a full mind to prevent that. Like if you have too many thoughts and you're just overstressed and you're consistently living in a place of chaos, it's really hard to empty your cup and to take the time to learn and to learn something new and something important to you. You can spend a ton of time learning about tasks and things and information you don't like. Not that it's a bad thing, but like some people go overboard with sports. Like they have they have fantasy football things and they know everything about the guy's girlfriend's wife's sister's brother who's in the NFL, right? And you spend so much time locking your mind into these things because they're social norms. Mm-hmm. People want to talk about football. They want to talk about the weather. They want to talk about a whole bunch of common things that you find in conversations. And that's cool to have conversations with people, but it's also very important to find out the details about yourself and your soul of what's important to you. Mm-hmm. And taking the time to explore those things.
What interests you?
What interests you. And for a lot of martial artists, it can be kind of a weird place because not a lot of people that you interact with on a daily basis talk about martial arts. Mm-hmm. And maybe you are somebody who loves knitting and that's what you love doing. It can be hard to find other people that knit. The internet has helped with that.
Yeah.
And it's allowed people to connect into these small little niches and form communities. Totally. And you can find people that you can learn and grow from.
Oh, you like that too? Me too. Oh, great. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. And then you bounce ideas off of you. And all of a sudden you're creating new things in these little new niches. And I can't stress the importance of what it's like to go through a day and feel like you've learned something, feel like you've seized more information from it. And I hope that there's a person that you could talk to about it, because one thing I love doing is after you've learned something is to kind of have a sounding board and bounce the ideas and to talk with another person about it. I find it's so powerful and it helps the learning process.
Big time. And we're really good at that.
There's a community for everything. Yep.
And then teaching it.
Yeah.
Like you really learn martial arts through teaching. I know sometimes I was doing something and I was unconsciously doing it, but then you have to explain it to somebody else and all of a sudden it brings consciousness to every detail of that skill or task.
So let me ask you guys something. Obviously, martial arts, huge part of your lives. And obviously, entrepreneurship, huge part of your lives. When was the last time you remember digging in and having that white belt mindset for something that was not martial arts or business related? Either a hobby, something you wanted to pick up. Was it like a new dance move? Like something where you had that mentality and you felt that little spark, just like you did when you were a kid and you started out and it was Ninja Turtles and the whole thing. When was the last time you really felt that, like that thirst and felt like that sponge?
So outside of business and martial arts, I would say the last thing that I've done where I kind of felt like a rookie or a white belt was, and I haven't been continually doing it, but I'm progressively getting better, is Spanish. I recently was trying to learn Spanish, and my girlfriend speaks Spanish, so I was trying to learn Spanish so I could hear if people were talking about me behind my back. Naturally. No. I was learning because I wanted to be able to go to El Salvador and speak with her family. But Spanish, when I was first learning it, I've never learned a language before. I'm like, I'm never going to understand any of this. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm nowhere near fluent, but I'm starting to pick it up and starting to learn it and tuning into it. And now when I watch TV shows like Narco, I'm trying to understand as they go along versus just watching it unconsciously. But language is a really cool way. Communication is so important.
For me, the last time I felt like I have no idea what I'm doing and this is amazing was getting into shooting guns and owning a gun. I own a gun now. Okay, and you gotta understand, in Canada, very few human beings own a gun. You know,
right?
It's you if you're on a ranch, you got a rifle to shoot wolves or whatever. You know, but very few people have guns in Canada, and it's just not part of our culture like it is in the U.S. Right. And I remember growing up, because it's just not part of our culture. Like, you don't understand, like, why would you have to have a gun? Well, you have to have a gun because everybody owns a gun. So if you don't own a gun, you're the odd man out. Like, oh wow, that really sucks. Nobody owns guns.
Yeah.
So I just never, like, as a kid growing up, like, I was into weapons, I was into throwing stars and swords and all kind. I was just never into guns. Ever. Like I shot a pellet gun, you know, I shot a rifle once, and it was like, okay, cool, yeah, not for me. Don't really care. Like, big deal. Right. But then I did a mechanical engineering degree and really started to understand the beauty of mechanics and the incredible ingenuity of the human mind to come up with machines and mechanisms that improve our lives. As a mechanical engineer, your job is to do exactly that. Create machines that provide value. And I thought that was a pretty cool endeavor to embark on. That's why I did it. I want to create machines that provide value. And that creative space, though at my core, I am a creative. I love painting. I love doing, and I'm not an academic. Like, I am not cut out for an engineering degree. And there's like very few people are like, that makes sense. No, it doesn't, because I was a C student. I just knew how to work hard, and I learned how to work hard from martial arts. I learned that when I got my white belt, how to stick with it when you want to quit, how to push through when you think there's nothing left. And I learned how to continually work at it and get that degree. And that's what's so beautiful about that white belt mentality, is that if you can take that throughout your life, you can learn anything. And I realized I totally took that on a tangent because it was started with guns, but that was a beautiful little tangent.
Yep.
So the gun part, it wasn't until I really appreciated the mechanical genius. And my dad goes to the shooting range. He's like, come to the shooting range with me. I went to the shooting range with him, shot my first handgun, and I was just admiring this mechanical engineering genius. There's a button here, it's all ergonomic, and it is incredible. So that sparked my interest. And then all of a sudden, I started to see the skill involved of trying to hit a target. And how often in our own lives do we want to hit targets? We want to set a goal. We want to shoot it. You know, that's built into the human nature. We as humans are target-seeking beings. When we were first brought onto this planet, we were locked onto a target. That's my meal. That's how I live to see tomorrow. It's survival. You lock onto a target. My goal is to club that bunny rabbit. All right. Wow. Turns out the human species has progressed to the dominant. There's a reason why those assets that we have allowed us to progress to where we are. right?
For sure.
I've gone down too many rabbit holes.
It's interesting though, because I and I approach that from because I am also into firearms, and for me it came in the opposite way. Like I understand your mechanical engineering background. For me, I developed an interest in how something was engineered after I learned about it. So, I was brought into firearms, and I trained, and I went to the range all the time with a very good friend of mine. And just the fact of a firearm, the 1911, right? John Moses Browning created the 1911, and that design, and it's called 1911 because 1911, like that's when he basically made this thing.
Crazy.
That design is current with very few, if any, updates. It's just a flawless mechanical design. And to me, realizing that something created and engineered over 100 years ago is the standard today is mind-blowing.
It's crazy.
Kidding.
How cool is that this, with the tools and knowledge and development at the time, in the early part of that century, that it has withstood all that way. And that's something that draws my interest. I mean, there's so many different things to just, to learn about that and everything in general. Plus it's just kind of fun going to the range and shooting stuff. So there's that too.
Absolutely.
So can we flip this and this white belt mentality into a Budo challenge, a Budo Brothers challenge in relation to being that sponge? What do you guys got? Any ideas?
All right. The Budo Brothers challenge is for the next 24 hours, you know nothing. And every human being that you interact with, your objective is to learn something from them.
I like that.
Kids too. It counts if you're near kids. You can always learn something from kids.
For sure. The new TikTok dance.
All right, guys. I think that's a perfect place to wrap this one up. Any final thoughts? Any last thing that you want to say before we shut her down right now?
Can't top that.
I just got to say, make sure if you're listening to this podcast, find us on all the social media things. Make sure to comment, subscribe, and that is my podcast radio pitch for the day.
But no, straight up, you know what? You know what's really cool about this podcast is that we actually just have conversations that we all grow from during the podcast.
Absolutely.
We were like, what are we going to talk about? We have a topic. That's it. All right, let's take this baseline for a walk. So it's this beautiful freestyle of discovery between a bunch of white belts. And
I almost thought you were going to say a bunch of white guys.
Come on.
Budo Brothers is racist.
we're yin and a yang. We're good.
Oh my God, you two.
The best.
All right, man. Well, thank you as always. And everybody, thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.
All right.
See ya.
See you then.
Yep.